Hello there, this is Brett Lonsdale, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon on DeliverPoint. It's great to see many people joining, and what we're going to cover today is basically DeliverPoint as far as a SharePoint permissions management tool, and we're also going to cover some of the new features that we've just launched in version 4. This month has been DeliverPoint month. We've been working hard on getting a new release out to you, and we're going to go through and explore what some of those brand new features are inside the product. First of all, for anybody that is new to Lightning Tools and also to the product, I'm just going to do a very quick introduction as to who I am and who the company is as well. Yeah, I am Brett Lonsdale. I'm the founder of Lightning Tools. We created Lightning Tools back in 2007, so 15 years ago, although it doesn't feel like that. And we created the product to help make businesses more efficient when they're using Microsoft SharePoint. And of course, back then, this was with SharePoint on premises, and things have evolved all the way through to SharePoint Online that we're all using today, and also some of the surrounding applications, such as, of course, Microsoft Teams and OneDrive and so on as well. The company Lightning Tools, we provide a number of different products that help to make you more efficient. And of course, DeliverPoint, right at the very top of the list here, is what we're going to be taking a look at today. But we also have other products as well. Next month is actually going to be our Lightning Conductor webinar, and we've got a new release of that too. So the Lightning Conductor is our content aggregation tool. So you can aggregate content from SharePoint lists and libraries, but also from other Microsoft 365 apps as well, like Planner and OneDrive and Teams and Microsoft To Do, etc. We also have discussion boards, so you can use Social Square inside of Teams and inside of SharePoint in order to be able to build things like communities of practice, to be able to extend classroom environments with the ability to ask questions, etc., from other team members. So that's a product that we also have coming up for a new release in a few months' time. We have a data viewer, which is a data integration tool, and Lightning Forms, which is our SharePoint list form design tool. So you can transform that standard sort of SharePoint form look and feel to a very powerful business form that's got a great layout and also great logic that supports your business inside of SharePoint. This is what we do as a company. But what we're going to do here is focus in on DeliverPoint, as I mentioned. So DeliverPoint is the SharePoint permissions tool. It is available for SharePoint on premises. If anybody is using SharePoint on premises, it looks a little bit different, but the layout generally and the options are generally the same. We're going to be focusing in on SharePoint Online today. The product is available for SharePoint Online. You can also use it inside of Microsoft Teams, and we'll be showing that as we go through the demonstrations. And it's catering for two different roles of user. And when it comes down to SharePoint permissions inside of SharePoint out of the box, if you provision a SharePoint site, you become the owner of that SharePoint site. If you've done that before, you'll have seen that you are the owner, and therefore you get to add who those members are that will be able to access your SharePoint site. And the same thing happens with a team as well. So if you create a new team, again, you are the owner of that team. You get to invite external users, you get to invite internal people, you get to create sharing links or approve sharing links and so on as well. And you therefore have that responsibility of managing all of that. And quite often, you have a better understanding, and not all the time, but sometimes you have a better understanding of who should have access to the files that you're putting inside your team or putting inside of your SharePoint libraries than perhaps IT would. So IT is sort of governing the SharePoint permissions and enforcing good practices as far as permissions and security is concerned inside of SharePoint Teams. But when it comes down to that granular level, when we're looking at folders that you're creating or files that you're creating, you will probably know who should be able to access that files or folder. So you will know what customers, if it's external people, or what vendors, and also what internal people within inside your team. And unfortunately, some of the features inside of standard SharePoint don't enumerate every single user, and it becomes across a little bit vague because there's no enumeration of things like Active Directory security groups showing you literally a list of people who have permissions. And there's also no bulk management either. So you have to do everything one by selecting individual files or individual folders and going through the motion to be able to see who has access to that content. So this is where we can help the business user who may provision a site and become that site owner. We can help you with contextual permission reports that are easy to use, and they explain well who has permissions to your content, who has the sharing links to your content, and so on. But also as a site collection administrator or a SharePoint administrator, you can go through and look at who's got permissions to your different sites, the site collections, and do things on a bigger scale than just that sort of contextual side in a site or in a list or a library. So this is what we're going to get into today. We're going to take a look, first of all, at site owners and what the responsibilities are of those site owners. So if you think that you do own a team or you do own a SharePoint site, and you are responsible for those users having access to the content, some of the things that you may need to do is keep on top of the fact that people are going to be changing roles inside your team or inside of your SharePoint environment. You may need to remove some users, you may need to add others, you may have people going on vacation and needing therefore somebody to be able to cover for them while they're gone, and therefore be able to take on the permissions even though it may be for a short term. So these are the sorts of things that we need to make sure that we can stay on top of inside of the sites that you're managing, and DeliverPoint will be able to help us to accomplish that. So there's also, as I mentioned, from the SharePoint administrator or the site collection administrator side, where you've got that larger responsibility of maintaining multiple site collections or even the entire tenant as far as permissions is concerned. And sometimes this requires bulk operations. So if somebody is leaving the organization, what is it they had permissions to? How can we go through and remove those permissions easily? Or it may be that we've got a bit of a mess to clean up. There may be people in the past that have been removed from the Active Directory because that was the quickest and easiest way to stop them from accessing SharePoint. And as we look around SharePoint, we find that they still are appearing inside of SharePoint groups. They're still appearing with direct permissions and so on. So we've got a bit of a cleanup as far as that's concerned to carry out. And the same thing could apply to users that have been removed by simply just removing the SharePoint license. So if you remove a SharePoint license from somebody, of course, they can't access SharePoint, but still they're going to show up inside of permission reports. And whilst that's not a security risk, it is untidy, and people are going to ask questions. We're going to have the leadership team wondering why somebody is still permissioned on confidential content inside of SharePoint when perhaps they left the organization a couple of years ago. They'll be seeing in black and white that they have permissions to that content. So these are some of the things that may concern the SharePoint administrator, and we're going to have a look at how DeliverPoint can help with all of this. So DeliverPoint for site owners, and we're going to see a demonstration in just a moment. It does provide you with reports, as I mentioned, that are very clear and concise. We can see a list of users, literally what permissions they have and how they actually obtain that permission. So what groups were they a member of in order to be able to get the permission that we're seeing that they have inside that permission report. And from within inside that permission report itself, you can perform some changes. So it may be that you notice somebody has permissions and you want to remove their permissions because they're moving departments or they're leaving the organization. So we can do things like delete permissions or revoke permissions if we see that the permission levels are too high for a particular user. We can also copy the permissions between users, and we can transfer permissions between users as well. And that's not just on the site level, but we can also include everything inside that site that may have unique permissions that we also want to affect. And 4 months ago, we introduced a new permission summary report, which is a great place to get started if you're perhaps taking on a SharePoint site that's an existing SharePoint site and looking to get a good understanding of what the permission structure is. We can go through and look at that permission summary report and determine what sharing links exist and what unique permissions exist within inside that site, and drill down into those items in order to be able to manage the permissions on them. So let's take a look at how we can navigate DeliverPoint from a site owner perspective. I see there is a question I didn't mention. Yeah, if there are questions, please feel free to put them in the Q&A panel. I will be addressing those towards the end of the webinar today, and make sure that they do get answered. So we're going to jump into the demo. So I'm just going to pull up my SharePoint environment here, and we're going to navigate into a sales team site. So this is a modern SharePoint team site. It's typical of what you might find inside of site as far as content is concerned, but also how permissions are concerned as well. We've got lots of different lists and libraries. Some of those lists have unique permissions. Some of the libraries have unique permissions. We've got some broken permission inheritance going on inside of those lists and libraries, and that's assigning permissions to direct users. It's also exposing sharing links, which are both to internal people and also to external users as well, or guest users. And we've also got some Active Directory groups in here as also, which are being used in order to be able to assign those permissions. So what we're going to do here is, first of all, start off with the out-of-the-box SharePoint permission report. So this is what we see inside that modern side panel of a SharePoint site. So consider yourself here wearing the hat of a site owner. And when we look at this, it's not telling us a great deal. We need to do some digging in order to be able to actually find out who has permissions to our site. And in here is a sales Active Directory security group. One of the challenges with that for the site owner is you can't actually see who the members of that group are, and therefore we're a little bit blind to what employees might actually have access to our site, because we don't know who is actually a member of that group. We have got the members group in here, and yeah, we can get into that. So as we go into the advanced permission settings here, you'll notice that we can go into the members group, and we can see that the sales AD security group is in here, but there's no actual individuals in there, otherwise they would show. But if I just hit back one level, you will notice there was a direct user here, demo user 8, that has edit permissions. And if we just go back one more to the site, and let's just pull up that panel again, just to point out that you didn't see inside that panel that user existed with the direct permissions. So that's not showing in here at all. So that's why we have to do some sort of digging around to find out what's going on. So what I'm going to do is just pull up the standard Discover Permissions report, and this is the SharePoint, sorry, the DeliverPoint Discover Permissions report. You'll notice how it differs straight away. We are enumerating every single person that has permissions to this site, no matter how they have permissions. And what we can do is sort and filter this report. So sometimes it might be useful to sort it by username in order to be able to make sure that the right people have permissions. We can also sort or filter by permission level. And in here, you're going to see that quite a few users have read permissions. So over on the right hand side here is how that person or these people gained permissions. So there is the demo user 8 that we've already established, who has direct permissions, but we've got all these other people with edit permissions, and we're not sure how they have edit permissions. So what we can do is just simply expand some of these rows, and we can see demo user 12, demo user 9, demo user 5. They're all inside that sales Active Directory security group, which is nested inside the members group of this site, and that's how they came around getting their edit permissions. And we may see some slight variations of that. So demo user 11 here is actually inside the Microsoft 365 group called Lightning Tool Sales Members, which is nested inside the Lightning Tool Sales Members SharePoint group. So people are permissioned in different ways, but ultimately ending up with the same level of permissions, which is the edit permission. Now we can get rid of some of the noise. I realize that when we go into some organizations, we've got a large amount of people. So what we can do is really start to focus in on certain permission levels or certain groups, etc. And we can filter out what we don't need to see or what we do want to see. So what I'm going to do here is, in fact, rather than get rid of my read, I'm going to show you that all of these read permissions, they've all come from the same thing. It's the everyone group. So the everyone except external users has been added into the visitors group for this site. So I might be comfortable with that. I want everybody to have access to the sales team because everybody should know how the sales are doing. So what we can do is filter out the everyone group. So I can say the permissioned via display name is not like everyone. So in here is the everyone. Let's save that. And now we've got rid of that noise. We're just focusing in on all of the other permissions that are inside this Discover Permissions report. And what I'm just going to do is sort by username again. And what I do want to just point out to you as well is that we do have some external users, some guest users, and you can see that at the top here. So there's two Brett Lonsdales. I actually don't think there is another Brett Lonsdale. I can't find one anyway. But yeah, there's two Brett Lonsdales here. This one is an internal user. We can see the people card on that one. And beneath it is an external user. So we can tell that now in version 4.0 of DeliverPoint that an external user is in italics. So those users are going to stand out a little bit. We can determine which ones are internal, which ones are external, which is very key when you go through to remove some of these permissions or something along those lines. All right, so that's the Discover permissions. It's exportable. So we can go through the actions menu here and we can export the report. We can also save it as a template. So if this is a report that we want to produce on a regular basis, I don't want to have to go through selecting my different sites, etc., and applying filters and so on a regular basis. I can save it as a template, and that allows me to reproduce that report within a couple of clicks whenever I want to. And we'll get into that very shortly as well. So I'm just covering some basics here of DeliverPoint. Those of you that already use DeliverPoint, bear with me. We're going to get into some of the new features soon. But yeah, in the document library, the biggest challenge that we're overcoming for you here is the fact that you can pull up permission reports for multiple files, multiple folders. And we can go through and select multiple ones here and then just simply pull up the Discover Permissions or the Sharing Links reports. Notice that there's nothing above download on that shortcut menu unless I have only one item selected, and that's when I get the SharePoint out of the box, Manage Access, which when I click that, again, I do get to see who's got permissions to that folder, but nobody's really got the time to do that on every single file or folder inside of your document library. So with DeliverPoint, we can simply select everything. We can discover the permissions. We're back to that same report, and we can see who's permissioned on each folder that I selected. And this is really handy to actually filter by user. So if I'm just onboarding a new user, I'll pick on me again, Brett Lonsdale. So if I'm looking at a particular user's permissions, it may be just a quick check to make sure that that person has the right permissions to those files or folders inside of that environment. Okay, so that's the type of thing that we can do there. Now, of course, you have subfolders. Those subfolders have subfolders as well, and items in there. So we can produce reports on a much larger scale within inside your site by jumping down into this permission summary report. And this is where we can just simply generate the permission summary report and get a good insight as to what's going on in the site. So we can see here how many sharing links there are in the entire site, not by going through each folder and each subfolder. We can see how many unique items, that's how many documents or how many SharePoint list items actually have unique permissions or broken permission inheritance. And likewise for lists as well. And we can even see sites. So there's actually 2 sites with unique permissions inside of this site collection. So with that information, we can drill down into these. So if I wanted to know what those items are that have unique permissions, we can pull that up. And this is showing me the site with unique permissions, but also the items with unique permissions. And sometimes this is all we need to see to have something jump out of us. And it doesn't matter if these are nested in a folder, they're going to show up inside this report if they have unique permissions. So I can select these 2 items here, these commission claims, and from the reports menu, we can discover the permissions on those commission claim forms. And there may be hundreds or thousands of users that are returned inside this Discover Permissions report. So what I can also do is just ask DeliverPoint to compare the permissions. Now I can see there's no differences between those two files at all. So what we'll do is maybe have a look at how it differs from the site. What I'm trying to do here is get to the bottom of why this has unique permissions. So if we compare permissions again, here we go. So we can now see that on the demo user 3 commission claims and the demo user 6 commission claims, the sales AD security group has contribute permissions to those two files, but doesn't have contribute permissions to the site itself. And we can also see the limited access at the site level as well, which isn't at the file level for those two files. So they are the only differences between the permissions on those objects. And of course, from there, we might decide, well, in that case, let's just go ahead and re-inherit those permissions, which I can do from here. The reason why I'm doing that is because the sales AD security group that already has member permission, edit permissions to the site, not necessarily the contribute permissions that's required on those commission claim documents. So I'm just going to go through and inherit and run that, and that will reinstate the permission inheritance on those two files. So these are the sorts of things that we can do to start to clean up some of the permission reports. Now, hopefully, if you're a user of DeliverPoint already, you're going to like this because I've just made some changes. Now I don't need to rerun the report. I can just refresh it. And we can see the total number of unique items has come down from 11 to 8 and so on. And we've also got rid of some sharing links in there too, by the looks of it. All right, so that's the sort of thing that we can do with the permission summary. And yeah, getting into the sharing links is also something useful. So yeah, as I jump into that, we can see what sharing links exist inside the site. This is showing me two different items with sharing links. The top one shared with anybody. This bottom one is shared with specific people, and we can see who those people are. And we also include the list sharing links as well in that report. So these are things that we can do contextually. Notice that I didn't leave the site. They're all permission reports that we're running inside of that site. And I can make changes from here too. So we saw, for example, that demo user 8 has some direct permissions. And I'm going to pick on that just because it's obvious, you're going to see it change. So let's take this, and what I'm going to do is just go through to the actions, account management, and we're going to just assume that demo user 8 is no longer a member of this department, and somebody's taken over their role. So I'm going to transfer the permissions from demo user 8 to demo user 9. So we'll select that user, and I have some choices. Do I want to affect not just the site, but do I want to affect any subsites where demo user 8 has permissions and the site has unique permissions? Likewise for lists, folders, and items if they meet that same criteria. We can support rollback, which allows me to reverse this job. So we can do that, like I mentioned earlier. Maybe demo user 8 is going on vacation, demo user 9 is going to cover for demo user 8. So when demo user 9 is, or demo user 8 is back, we're going to want to reverse that operation perhaps. So we could do it for that reason, or we can also do it as a safety net to avoid those phone calls coming in and saying, why can I no longer access my stuff? There's the ability to modify groups. So we can modify the SharePoint group memberships and also the Microsoft 365 group memberships. Now, I did, out the corner of my eye, catch one of the questions, and that was, can we also modify the Active Directory security group members? We could if we wanted to, but we don't. We actually made a conscious decision not to affect AD security groups when we're transferring permissions or removing permissions from people, because that can have a knock-on effect to other applications and not just SharePoint or Teams. So for that reason, I am going to jump to a unique permissions report a little bit later on, which will show you what groups a user is a member of, and they may still be permissioned because they are a member of an AD security group, but we'll be able to produce a report that shows me what AD security groups that user is a member of, and therefore we're armed with that information when we speak to the Active Directory administrator, and we can ask them to remove that user from those groups if necessary. So I'm going to run this job, and what you can see is it started transferring the permissions from demo user 8 to demo user 9. We can see here how many sites and how many lists, etc. This was scanning through, and these are the changes that took place. Okay, so we've made those changes, and if we go back to the Discover Permissions report, you can see I've got demo user 8 selected, and what we're going to do is just refresh that report, and notice how it's now demo user 9 that has that edit permission and not demo user 8. And if ever we wanted to roll that back, here's the job, the demo user 8 to demo user 9. I can simply select that and I can roll it back again. So that's going to reverse the job for me, which we can see is taking place here. And let's go back to the Discover Permissions report again. So we've got demo user 9 showing, and let's refresh the report. And it's back to demo user 8 again. Okay, so that was on a direct permission. As long as we tick those boxes, it would do the same thing for the SharePoint groups and the Microsoft 365 groups as well. Okay, so that is the type of reporting that we can do inside of a site. Let's jump back to our PowerPoint presentation. I did notice another question out the corner of my eye, and that is, can you schedule these reports? Make sure you stay to the end. So yeah, what we're going to do is get into that a little bit later on. So here we're going to take a look at DeliverPoint for SharePoint administrators. So the sort of thing you might want to do as an administrator. So some of it is the same. You can run Discover permissions on larger scopes. You can do advanced permission reporting. We can look at dead accounts, unlicensed users, those things that I mentioned. We can also make bulk permission changes. So not just transferring permissions within inside a site, but maybe across entire site collections. We can also, as I mentioned, create templates as well for maybe we can create the templates for our site owners to run to make things even easier for them. So let's jump back into DeliverPoint. And what we're going to do is just access DeliverPoint from the shortcut menu here. We can get to DeliverPoint that way. We may also decide that we want to get to DeliverPoint via a web part on a page. So if you want a static URL to go to, you can actually embed DeliverPoint as a web part on that page. So you've always got that same URL to get to DeliverPoint rather than getting it in through this way, as you just saw. Now, the important thing to understand in DeliverPoint is what we refer to as a scope. So when I come into the DeliverPoint app, you'll notice that we've got a selected scope, and the selected scope is the site that I was in when I accessed DeliverPoint. So that's Lightning Tools Sales. Now I can change the scope by showing the tree view, and the tree view allows me to go through and select other sites or other site collections or even lists and libraries, and that becomes the scope. So notice if we, for example, click this portals/community, that becomes the scope. I can select the sales site as well. I can also select portals, hub, etc. So we're changing the scope. Now the scope is not just a site or just a site collection. It's really that object and down. So if I select a site, for example, under Lightning Tools Sales, it may be the region site that I selected. The region site is my scope, but that scope contains everything beneath the region site. So document libraries, lists, folders, items, etc. So when I'm performing my jobs or performing my reports, it's reporting based on that scope. So the tree view can also be sorted, searched. We can also filter it based on the different type of object as well. So you'll notice some slightly different icons in here, which are determining which sites are teams, which sites are classic site collections, which ones are Microsoft 365 groups, and also hub sites. So this one here is actually a SharePoint site, but it's a teamified SharePoint site. It has a root site, which is Lightning Tool Sales. It has two subsites, partners and regions. And we can see by looking at the tree view that the region site has unique permissions, whereas partners is inheriting. And I can tell that because regions is in full color, partners is dimmed. So we can focus our efforts, therefore, on the objects with unique permissions. I can see that this document library has unique permissions, as does this list here. And I can do that just simply by looking at that tree view. So with all of those objects selected that have unique permissions, this is where I can run things like the compare permission reports across those objects with unique permissions. So that's really helpful. And again, you can export all of these reports as well if you want a snapshot of them. There's some reports which we could run from the scope of a site collection, which are really powerful, such as this Discover Permissions Advanced. And as I go into that one, you'll notice in here that we can pre-filter it. So again, I'm going to pre-filter this to say, not like the everyone group. Sorry, if I choose the permission via display name. So let's put everyone. Okay, and we can go through and choose here what we want to see inside of it. So I can tell it, what I'm telling it here is actually to include everything with unique permissions inside the report, and I can go through and generate that. And here we have the everyone group excluded, and every object that has unique permissions within the scope of this site is included inside this report. So we've got the list permissions, which is including clients and documents, and then down to items as well. We're seeing all of those, which is very useful to see. And once more, we could go through and export that, or we could also save that as a template. So because we went through and selected some options, an end user wouldn't necessarily know how to do that. So what I could do is just call this sales site collection monthly report. And we'll make that shared, which means that anybody with full control, anybody that is an owner of this site, will also be able to access that report. And the way that they'll be able to access it is by going to the reports menu and choosing report templates. And here it is right at the very top of that list of templates. So they can just simply select the template and generate it without actually having to select anything here or set any options. In fact, if I close DeliverPoint, come back into it again, we can just simply jump in, select it, generate it, and there's the report, excluding the everyone group and giving us the permission reports that we want to see on all of those objects. So it's really quick and easy to run that dynamic report whenever we want to run it on demand. Now, the other thing we can do is come back to it and look at it, so we can see what filter was set in place on this template. We can see what options were refined, and if we want to change any of that, we can. So if we decided that we also wanted to include sites that inherit permissions, we could check that box, or we could also go through and change our filters as well. So that just saves those changes back to the template. But what we might also decide to do is to clone this report. So I can go through and select that one now, and I can change the scope. So I'm going to go through and actually add a different site collection to this, which is going to be my marketing site collection. So marketing saw this report that we were running on a monthly basis, and they decided they wanted it too. So I can simply go through and delete the sales one, leave the marketing one in place. And now I have a marketing Discover Permissions report with the same options selected that we can produce whenever we want to. So there it is. We can just select that, hit generate, and we get the same report that you just saw, but on the marketing team or the marketing site. Okay, so some powerful features there as far as the templates are concerned. So the other types of things that we can do by selecting these scopes, there's some site collection scope type reports that we might want to run. One of them that I find especially useful is a unique permissions report. This comes up all the time. We've got somebody again, maybe somebody that's going to leave the org. So we'll choose demo user 8. And what I want to see is, what groups are they a member of? What do they have permissions to? So I can produce this report here and see exactly that. So at the top here, collapsed, is the account membership. This is the one that shows me what groups that user is a member of. And it may include Active Directory security groups as well. So if I did remove all the permissions for this particular user, and I'm sure there's some AD groups left behind that they are a member of, this will tell me what AD groups they are a member of. We can also see site permissions, list permissions, and item permissions. Now, the worrying thing about this one is most of these permissions are all assigned as a direct permission. And generally, that's something that we want to avoid inside an organization. So what we might decide to do is actually grant permissions, which we can do from the actions menu here. So we could go through to the account management, say grant permissions. I'm going to grant permissions to demo user 8, not by making them have a direct permission, but putting them in a group. So I could put them into the sales group, So I think it's this one here. And yeah, again, I can refine what subsites and lists and folder items, etc. I want to include. I can also support the rollback just in case I need to. And that'll go through and do that granting of permissions by making that user a member of the group. So they've been added to that. And now I could, well, refresh that to see what changes that made. So we just give that a moment to run here. There we go. So now we're actually seeing that Demos 8 is a member of the Sales AD security group, and they have some permissions assigned via that. Okay, and what I can then do is say, I'm going to actually go through and delete permissions now from Demos 8. There we go. And I am not going to modify any SharePoint groups or Microsoft 365 groups, which means when I run this, it will just take away the direct permissions for me. So they will just be left behind with permissions that were assigned through the Microsoft 365 group or whatever group I made them a member of. And once more, we can refresh that. And what we should see is some of those permissions have then been removed. So as we scroll down, I didn't process subsites, which is why you're still seeing that one, but all of those other item permissions that were all assigned directly, we've cleaned them up now. Okay, so again, great time-saving tools that we can run there. Some other type of reporting that we have dead account reporting, we have unlicensed users and external users that I mentioned to you. We can run these not just on one site collection, but many site collections. What we're going to do here is just run an unlicensed user report. So running that, you can see that inside the site collections I selected, so I selected 5, demo user 5 is in 4 of them, and they are unlicensed. So I have a choice. I could, of course, relicense that user if that was the way out of this, or if they actually have left the organization, I can just simply remove that unlicensed user, which will take away any permissions that they have, take them out of all the groups, etc. So it's cleaning up that process. And we can do the same thing, like I say, with dead accounts and also with external users as well. So running this will allow me to see what external users I have inside of these site collections. So there's the Brett Lonsdale. I can select that and remove the external user if I want to. Okay, so these are some of the useful reports that we have, and I'm conscious of time, so I'm just going to jump into some of the brand new features that we have. Before I do, yeah, let's just point out seamlessly, of course, I didn't forget that slide was there at all, that DeliverPoint also works inside of Teams. So it's activated as a personal app, so we can come into the personal app on the left hand side here, and you can use that same functionality inside of the Teams environment. So it's really the same arguments. You've got people that are members of multiple different teams. We want to find out what teams they're a member of in bulk, not just on one, and then we can remove them, we can transfer the permissions and all of the other stuff. So it's exactly the same options that we have through here. So if I did a search on Lightning Tool Sales, we can access that, discover the permissions from within inside the Teams environment, and run that exact same report. Okay, and now I can move on to the new features. So brand new features, we have usage reporting, which is something that you've been asking for a while. So the argument behind that is, well, I have this site, we've got all the permissions, I don't know who's accessing it or if anybody's accessing it at all, especially when it comes to Teams, because people are spinning up Teams all the time and then maybe not getting engagement. So we can have a look at what objects are being used down to the file level. We can also see what's unused inside of those sites as well. And that acts as a entry point to all of the permission reports that you've seen so far. So if we look at the site and we see that it's got no engagement, we can have a look at the permissions and maybe that's the issue. Or if it's got a lot of engagement, maybe there's too many people visiting it that we would like, and so on. We also have a view where you can just see the site collections that you own. So as the current user, we can see all of those in one place. So you can manage all your permissions without going through that entire tree view in order to be able to find the object that you want to report or manage on. And in answer to one of the questions in here, we have scheduled permission reporting, or depending where you're from, scheduled permission reporting. That allows us to look at things like the unique permissions report and the discovered permissions report and have it just produced for us in an Excel format in a document library on a periodical basis. So that could be every month or every week or whatever we want. We also have a built-in getting started guide. As you've seen, there's a lot to DeliverPoint, and sometimes trying to find your way around it, if you're new to it, can be daunting. So we have a built-in user guide where you don't actually have to reach out to our website or watch any videos. You can just simply go through the guide inside the product in order to get help. And we've improved the user experience to make sure that we've got better tooltips that are actually fly-out tooltips now, and also they have improved explanations, but also you'll find the site has been redesigned, or the DeliverPoint has been redesigned quite a bit in order to be able to make it more intuitive to use. So let's go in and have a look at some of these things. So we'll go back into DeliverPoint, and what we're going to do here is jump straight into the Discover usage. So the Discover usage, it's running on the current scope, which is Lightning Tool Sales, and I've got some options. So I can include other sites as well. I can include files. Here's an example of one of our flyouts. We've got the usage that we can also include, and then we can provide it a date range. So this is basically looking at today minus 182 days as our date range. And you can click into that, you can remove this, and you can select a particular date that you want to look at if you want to. So you do have the calendar option there. So if it is looking at the usage for the last month that you want to see, or something, you can go through and do that. I'm just going to leave that as it was and hit generate. And we'll be able to see what the usage was like on all those objects. So first of all, we have the unused objects. So these are all the files, or could be sites as well, that are unused inside of this site collection. Then we have the most used objects. So you can see the site itself has 1,231 views, and that diminishes as we go down to some of these different files. And then we've got the objects that are used the most by users. So there's 10 different users that is equated to that count of 1,200 views. So we can see how many unique users are accessing some of these objects as well. Now from here, we can drill into that. So if I was interested in the site, I could select the site. In fact, we could select all 3 sites, and then we can discover the permissions on those 3 sites. So that Discover usage report acts as the entry point to all of the other reports, as I mentioned. Okay, so that's what we can do from there, and of course on the files as well. And another way of getting to that would be to go to the, sorry, let me just deselect that. There we go. So I'm just going to go back in. I had something selected somewhere. There we go. So my own site collections. This actually doesn't run on a scope. I think it's the only report that doesn't run on a selected scope inside of DeliverPoint. It's basically running through every site collection to determine which ones you, current user, are the owner of. So all of these site collections I am the owner of. There's 5 pages of them, and now I can start managing them from there. You can see we've got different types. So a lot of these are teams. If I want to filter based on that type, we can do that. So I can look at just teams or just hubs, etc. And we can then start to drill into them. So by selecting maybe these site collections at the top, we can discover the usage on those site collections from there, or we could also just jump straight into some of the different permission reports. And just to show a few other permission reports, maybe the unique objects would be a good one. So we can have a look at the unique objects within those 3 site collections. So here they all are. And again, we can now start drilling into those to see who's got permissions to those objects that have unique permissions. All right, so that's a brand new view, the My Owned Site Collections, and we've also got the Discover Usage. Now, when I'm in DeliverPoint, you've probably not noticed a button that says Schedule anywhere, because what I wanted to do is point out that when you first add DeliverPoint, maybe you're a new trialer of DeliverPoint, you're not going to see the Schedule button, but you can enable it. So we're going to pull up another tenant in here that does have it enabled. So when I go into DeliverPoint in this tenant, there's a nice new schedule button, which is part now of standard DeliverPoint. So this allows me to schedule a discover permissions, a sharing links, or a unique permissions report. So the way that we would do that, I'm just going to back out of DeliverPoint for a moment. I'm going to copy the link to this document library, and we're going to go back into DeliverPoint. And what I'm going to do is say I want to schedule a discover permissions report, and I want it to be created in this document library here. So it's going to go to that document library, and then I can choose the frequency of it. So this is something I want monthly. So I can choose the first of every month or whatever day I want, and a certain time if I like, and then I can just hit schedule. And that schedules that report to be run on that basis. Okay, so it's been scheduled, and now we can check the scheduled reports by going into the scheduled reports view. And this allows me to see the different types of reports. We've got some of them that are discover permissions, some are unique, some are sharing links, and we can see the site collection that they're going to be running on, or the scope that they're going to be running on. We've also got the status, so whether it's completed, which is the green tick, if it's processing, or if it's just scheduled and of course not taken place yet. So we've got the date and time when it was actually scheduled, the frequency, and whether it was produced or not. And if it is produced, we have a hyperlink to it. So we can just simply click onto that, and it opens it up as a CSV file. So when we open up that CSV file, we'll be able to see everybody that is permissioned on that site in an Excel format. Okay. So, and of course, from here, you could style this report. You can format it as a table that allows you to filter it and get to the information that you want to see. And if you want to be alerted to the fact that it is there, of course, you can go into the document library where you're creating these reports, and you can manage your alerts, and you can sign up for an alert on that document library. So if something new appears in it, you get alerted to that fact. And of course, you could do that on a folder. So all your permission reports are going into a particular folder. So what that provides you with is the ability to run on a much larger scale. So it might be that we do want to look at a user's permissions anywhere in multiple site collections that are all full of hundreds of thousands of documents. So that, when you're using an on-demand report, is going to take some time to run. So if you run it as a scheduled report, it may not matter as part of your auditing process if you get it in a month's time, as long as you get it. And that's the benefit of the scheduled reports. But I would say if you've got a smaller scope, the templates offer a nice way to produce a report on demand when the users require it, and they can take better control that way as well. Okay, so that is some of the unique features or new features, and I'm going to go back into DeliverPoint again to show you we've got this help option now as well. So under the help menu, you're going to see getting started, and what we have is the inline help. So under the introduction, there's 6 different topics, sort of getting you started with DeliverPoint. If we've already got started and we're interested in discovering the usage of our sites, we can jump straight to that and see how to discover usage and so on. So that is there directly in the product, which, granted, a lot of people that are using DeliverPoint are end users. They may not even know that Lightning Tools exists. They're just using the product. So they don't know to go to our help or to our help center on our website. So you can just get to the help through here. But if you do want to get to the help center, you can do that too. You can submit a support ticket from here, and you can even suggest a feature. So if you do want to appear in one of these webinars, as I named that feature, I brainstormed that one, that's how you can do it. You can go to the suggest a feature, and we do actually monitor those, take notice of them, and that's what helps us to build our product out. Okay, so just a couple of other things to answer. How is this installed? This is all a SharePoint Framework app. So that SharePoint Framework app is deployed through the app catalog. So yeah, of course, you would need to have a admin to install that for you. Quite common questions that come up is, where's our data stored? What's the privacy and everything set on for that? There is no data storage. This is something that resides inside your tenant. You're reporting live against the permissions that are inside your SharePoint sites and your teams. So there's nothing to store. It's all just displayed, which you can filter and sort. The only time something gets stored is if you export an Excel document, and then it's down to you as to where you export that report to. So there's no processing or storage outside of your tenant at all. If you want the scheduled reports, this is done through a Azure app and also Azure SQL database. So there is available a guide that will help you to deploy those features into your Azure environment. And once it is deployed, that's what is going to provide you with that schedule button, so you can go through and schedule those reports. Okay, so from here, if you're new to DeliverPoint and you like the idea of using this, you can actually go through and help yourself to a 30-day trial. You can do that from our website. Just go to lightningtools.com, under products, navigate to DeliverPoint, and you'll be able to see the trial button there, and you can set that up. If you want to discuss some specifics inside your organization privately in a demonstration, you can do that too from the same page. So go onto the DeliverPoint page, you can set up a demo, and you can also request a quotation from there as well. And if you're an existing user, you can head off to the customer download center, and you can download the new package of 4.0 from now, and you can get that installed inside your environment and start to use the new functionality. So at that point, I'm going to go through some of these questions. So I'm just going to repeat one of the questions that I answered earlier on. What will happen to those users removed from the Active Directory? Are they going to be flagged in DeliverPoint in order to be removed by the site owners? Okay, so you have to be a site collection administrator. But if you are a site collection administrator, you can run the dead account report. And let me just, I didn't really show the dead account report being run. So I'm just going to show you that, and I'm going to pull up my marketing hub and run the dead account report on the marketing hub. And you can see here is Carl. So Carl is, in this case, a dead account. So I can choose that account. I can remove that dead account. Simple as that. Yeah, that's what happens to him. Permissions are removed. He's no longer in any groups, etc. And we just cleaned up that account. Okay, so that's how we can do that, but that does have to be run by a site collection admin. So another question, so can DeliverPoint run a scheduled report? Yep, so you've just seen that. This is something we can now schedule, but there is some setup to do in order to get that working inside your environment. You can always reach out to our support team, and they'll be able to help guide you with that as well. Are there timer jobs required to be installed for the reporting? No, there's no timer jobs. So there was for SharePoint on premises. So if you are referring to SharePoint on premises, we had scheduled reports in DeliverPoint for SharePoint on-prem. They were timer jobs, but not here. So we're using the Azure app in order to be able to schedule those. So another question is, if we have multiple site collections in the web app, can each site collection owner manage their own site collection? So the answer to that is yes. Also, if there's subsites with their unique permissions, with their own dedicated site owners, so who can manage their own subsites. Okay, so anybody that is the site owner or has full control to their subsite, they will be able to see DeliverPoint show up. And just to sort of illustrate that, if I take this site here, the Lightning Tools Sales, and what I'm going to do is actually just make sure what user I'm going to do this as. Oh, sorry, don't know what I just clicked there. All right, so what we're going to do is just run a discover permissions report. And let's filter out read. Okay, so we have, yeah, maybe I need to relicense demo user 5, but rather than do that, let's just grant permissions. To demo user 6. And I'm going to give demo user 6 edit. Okay, so let's just run that. Okay, so a bunch of permissions assigned to demo user 6. And we'll sign in as demo user 6. And we're on the same site. I just pasted in the URL. And there's no DeliverPoint option showing up. If we navigate into a document library and we hit the ellipsis, there's no DeliverPoint options showing up. And likewise, on the command bar, there's no DeliverPoint option showing up. So demo user 6 cannot use DeliverPoint because they only have edit permissions. They don't have full control to this site. If I was to give them full control to another site, they'd be able to use DeliverPoint on that site. Okay, so that's how it works. It's all security trimmed, as is SharePoint out of the box. Okay, another question is, a lot of the functions you have demoed today do not exist in our current DeliverPoint function. Is this something to do with the version of DeliverPoint that we are currently using? Yes, most likely. So when you go into DeliverPoint, you'll be able to see the version number. We are now on 4 as of today. So previously you may have seen a 3.5, in which case you'd have seen templates and you'd have seen the permission summary report. If you didn't see those, it's likely that you're running an even older version, but you can download the package. And the place to go to download that is on the Lightning Tools website. You can navigate to the customer area and go down to the download center. And from there, under DeliverPoint, if you just click DeliverPoint, sometimes helps. So you can see DeliverPoint for SharePoint Online. So you can click onto that, and you can see here is the version 4, and that's where you can download that version 4. And there's some release notes in there as to what is included. Okay, so I think I've just answered the next question. When is 4 available? For now. Under the tree view on the left, can I see only sites which I own? It's a good question. So on the tree view on the left is everything that you have at least read access to. So it's going to show you, yeah, literally what you can read. If there was a site that you didn't have read access to, you're not going to see it. So I've completely come out of SharePoint. But that's the purpose of my own site collections. So yeah, when we go in here, so this tree view here is, yeah, like I say, everything that you have read permissions to, and you can navigate. That doesn't mean that you can make permission changes to something that you only have read access to. That won't work. It's only going to give you the functionality that you would have as a site owner. But you may need to navigate through something that you have read access to in order to get something that you have full control to. So yeah, just bear that in mind when you're using the tree view. But if you want to see just everything that you have ownership rights to, that's the My Owned Site collection. So you can run that and start to manage your sites from there. So another question, in our organization, we are not granting full control access to the site owners as we are eliminating some of the permissions, such as creating groups or sites. So having this custom level permissions, can we allow users with such custom permissions to view and manage DeliverPoint in their own site? Yes. So the best way of doing that would be through groups. So if they were the group owner, they should still be able to change who has permissions through the groups. So they're not actually changing permissions, they're just changing group memberships. So if you set those users up as members of a group and you allowed members of the group to change the group memberships, then you could allow them to control permissions that way in a very clean fashion, because they're not actually granting direct permissions or anything like that. They just for example, a sales manager could add somebody to the sales group if they were able to add people to that group, and that in turn gives them permissions. And then you as IT would be able to report on those permissions to make sure that the right people are in the right groups, and so on. So can DeliverPoint be enabled for a specific web app in the farm? Yes. So yeah, that question is obviously related to SharePoint on premises. PowerShell can be used to turn it on or turn it off on a web app or per web app basis, or even you can actually deploy the WSP to just certain web apps if that was the case. All right, I've got 3 questions from the same person here. So scheduled report, scheduling frequency available for selection is maximum 1 month. Could quarterly or biannually be made available? Good feedback. We'll take that and we'll look at it. At the moment, as you've seen, yeah, it is on a per month basis, but yeah, we could look at making quarterly available. The scheduled report output formatting is a more user-friendly formatting option available, e.g. PDF. So you can only export or produce the scheduled report as a CSV. When I use this myself, the first thing I do is I format the table of results as, oh sorry, I format the results doing a Control-Shift-End, format it as a table, choose the style that I want, and then if you wanted to save that as a PDF, you could. You can also get rid of some of the columns that you don't want to see, and so on as well. On a couple of occasions, you had to close the app and restart due to existing selections, which are lost to you. Could a clear all button be made available? Good feedback. Yeah, absolutely. Of course, closing and reopening is a good way of getting rid of any selections, but yeah, that would be really helpful. And then can I grant access, edit, to all of the read access users based on the report generated? Yes. So yeah, what you could do is get the report ready so it's only showing people with read access. So we can say permissions is read. You could then do select all, and you can go through and then do grant permissions. He says, okay, I was expecting that to populate it with all those people, but it didn't. So look. Looks like that's a lightning bug. We should be able to. So yeah, we'll get into that one, because what should happen here is the same as what happens with a copy permissions. Notice how it prefixes that. So we should have that same thing going on. Just like this, on the grant permission. So it looks like you found a little bug. So we'll get that fixed and updated in the product. All right, that's all the questions that I see. So thank you, everybody. Sorry we went slightly over time, but yeah, thanks everybody for attending the webinar today. I hope you got a lot out of it. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me on brett@lightningtools.com or sales@lightningtools.com if you have a sales question. All right, many thanks, everybody. Take care. Bye.